Hey, we
Hey,
are Doug and Amber, and today we're here to figure out,
Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, or ETA for short.
after 20 years earning our keep in corporate, we need a pivot to shake things up and try something totally different, working for ourselves.
We don't have millions in the bank or trust funds to pull from.
We just believe we can figure it out.
Right. Now, we're not experts. So if you're about to make a big decision, talk to someone with actual credentials first. We're just two people trying to forge a new path. So let's figure it out.
Yeah, let's do this thing. ETA stands for Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, which basically just means instead of starting a business from scratch, the idea is to buy one that already exists, one that has customers, employees, ongoing business, ongoing cash flow.
And as most people know, the majority of small businesses fail in the first few years. But with ETA, you're stepping into something that's already been working. So for mid career folks, it's a way to take control of your future without having to invent the next big app or TikTok or the wheel.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you think about that are different between having a startup versus buying an established business beyond just the risk of failure. So let me take you through what that looks like.
So we thought long and hard about what the right path to entrepreneurship was for us. And ultimately, we decided to buy a business. And we didn't do that lightly. And we actually explored other paths. So I want to take you through how we thought about the differences between buying a business or starting your own business. And of course, I made a chart. What you'll learn about me is I love charts. So I laid buy a business and start a business out side by side and just started thinking about the differences and deciding which one across all of those different attributes was right for us. So let's start with the big boy, risk of failure. Oh boy, doesn't this one keep you up at night? Yeah, so I mean, risk of failure is always something that can happen. Shoot, that can happen in a corporate career too, right? So but the differences when you buy a business to start a business are quite stark. If you buy a business that's been around for 5 or more years, it already has survived that time. It's got a proven track record, it's got existing operations. It's a lot lower risk. Starting a business, on the other hand, is actually quite high risk. Um, Various estimates will say anywhere between 70 to 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. Now, there are lots of variables there, and you could always start a business and beat those odds. But you have to do it right, and you have to go in eyes wide open and know what your risk is. For me and Doug, we definitely are more comfortable with the lower risk of buying a business. The next thing is cash flow. I mean, we don't want to have to work a corporate job while we are starting a business for years. And when you buy a business, you have immediate cash flow, which means you can pay yourself. When you start a business, that is delayed. And how long that delay is just depends on how fast your business takes off. For us, we need the immediate cash flow. So it's important to us when we buy a business that we find one that has enough cash flow that can pay us a decent salary so that we can spend all of our time and attention and energy growing and building that business. The second thing, or the third thing, sorry, we thought about is how long does it take to launch? And I mean, there's a lot of variables here too. You're going to hear in this process on a lot of different fronts. It depends. But in general, when you compare the two, buying a business is much shorter than starting a business. Now, buying a business has a process and that takes a while. For us, we're estimating this might take us around a year or so. But when you start a business, depending on how complicated or how big, it could take a long, long time. You have to do market research. You have to build a business plan. You have to decide how this is going to run and what resources you need. Then you have to find the financing. So that can be a very long process. So, again, for me and Doug, buying a business won on this category too. The next thing we looked at, like I just mentioned, is financing. Now, look, financing is never easy, but it's relatively easier when you buy a business, and that's because of risk. Lenders view existing businesses as much lower risk for a couple of reasons. One, uh, the track record, like I said, it's been up and running, so the risk of failure is much lower. But the second thing is usually assets. Sometimes it's real estate, but it could be equipment or inventory that can be used to recoup any kind of investment the bank may make in your business. So it is relatively easier to get financing with an existing business. When you start a business, it can be kind of difficult, especially if your business is somewhat novel. You have to find the right lender who understands what you're trying to do and can sell your vision to the underwriters in order to get loans. Or you have to find the right VCs or angel investors, or you have to have your own savings or credit that you can use. Sometimes that can be pretty difficult. For us, we don't have rich friends, parents with trust funds, and we're just regular working people with our retirement savings. So we decided on this front, buying a business is the way to go. The next thing is freedom. This one's hard because some people love all kinds of freedom. And what I mean by freedom is, you know, are you constrained by the choices that are able to be made? When you buy a business, that can be limited. It's already got a brand name, it may have a location, it's got contracts, vendors, employees, none of which you chose. So that has to be thought about when you start a business from scratch. The world is your oyster. You make all the calls and all the decisions. I tend to like to be able to make all the calls and decisions. So on this particular front, you could say starting a business wins here. But again, that's something that everybody has to decide for themselves. Some people like that freedom, some people feel overwhelmed. So you think through what you want and what you need. The next thing is brand recognition. When you buy a business, that brand is established. People know it. Even if it's just your corner sandwich shop, people know it, they know where it is, and they know what to expect from it. When you start a business, it's non existent, it comes from scratch. Now, that can be great because you can build a really strong business. You don't want to buy a business that's got a bad brand. So you've got to find the business that's got an established brand, it's got the right brand, and you've done your due diligence to feel confident it's got the right brand, or start a business where you make all of the calls and build it up from scratch, but knowing that's going to take a while to build that brand recognition, that reputation, goodwill, all of that. So the next thing, and I'm almost done, I promise, is the business model. What do you do and how does it work? What are your procedures for hiring people, for firing people, for waiting on a customer? What system do you use to check people out? What does your website backend look like? All of that is done for you when you buy a business because it's up and running. It's proven, it's established, and it's got history. When you start a business, most of this has to come from the ground up and it's unproven. So, what your business model is up to you. For us, we want to make sure we have a proven business model. We know that people want what we're selling and that we know how to sell it. And so for us, that was a win in the buy a business column. Finally, it's around cost. Cost is a really complicated category to compare these two. And I would say there's tons of variables and it depends here too. But in general, buying a business, you do pay more upfront. Remember, you're buying what somebody else has already built. And so there's value in that, and they are going to want to be paid for all of that hard work. When you start a business, it could be lower potentially. But if you make mistakes, you have to do rework, you have opportunity costs because it takes you 4 years or 3 years to get something up and running and you weren't making a salary during that time. It's harder to say which one wins on this one. So I'm going to chicken out and call it a question or a draw. I think this depends. It depends on what you want, what you're trying to do, and what industry you want to be in. So when we look at this list, Doug and I decided ultimately that buying a business had more wins than starting one. And that's why we decided to do what we've decided to do, which is try to buy a business.
And here's the wild part. There are millions of small businesses out there whose owners are trying to sell their business. They need to move or they've lost interest. Maybe they want to retire, especially baby boomers right now. They've built solid companies, but many don't have a succession plan. Sometimes their kids don't want to take over the family business, or they need to sell in order to fund their retirement. Maybe they don't have kids. Lots of reasons.
So that means more businesses are for sale right now than ever before. And these aren't giant corporations. They're everyday companies like HVAC contractors and auto shops and restaurants. People like us, regular folks, can actually buy them.
You might be thinking, okay, that sounds great, but just could anybody afford a company? Well, there's lots of ways to finance this. There's small business loans. You can actually finance 80 to 90%. There's seller financing, where the seller helps you. There's taking your 401k or other retirement funds, rolling it over. There's all kinds of other tools, and we're going to dig into those at each step of the way. But just know there's lots of ways to do this.
Sounds simple, right? Well, it's not. It takes time, effort, planning, and perseverance, and a thick skin when you get told no a few times.
But look, there are some really accessible ways, and people like us are doing it every day.
Optimism, our number one funding source.
Hey, for us, ETA is the perfect middle ground. We're not bootstrapping, gambling on an unproven idea. We don't want to keep working for somebody else, building their dream, building their wealth. We want to do it for us. But this makes it a way to do it in a stable way that makes sense for someone at our point in life.
It's also about legacy, building on other people's work and bringing it forward into the future, helping the community that this business is in, and building a future for each other.
We also have to be realistic about our stage in life. I'm just not comfortable starting a risky startup. I'm comfortable taking a calculated risk. I don't know if I would have the energy or the means to start from scratch. Entrepreneurship through acquisition feels like a good middle ground. It fits my risk tolerance and gives us enough room to grow and operate on our terms. So that's ETA in a nutshell: buying, running, growing an existing business. For us, it's our next chapter, and we'll be sharing all the ups and downs as we figure it out.
So if you're curious about ETA, please stick around. We'll break down the funding, our search process, and any pitfalls we find as we go.
And don't forget to do the YouTube-y stuff, like subscribe, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and let us know what you'd like to cover next. What are you curious about?
All right, well, that's one step closer.
Sure is. Progress, not perfection.
And remember, if we can figure this out,
You can too.